People are dying and will die who don't have to die. It is not hyperbole to suggest it's literally a tragedy.
President Biden holding a news conference Friday announcing the expansion of booster shots for millions of Americans, but the White House still dealing with multiple other crises these past few months, from overseas to the border. A new poll from The Hill showing that 54% of voters think the country is on the wrong track right now. 41% say it's on the right track. This as Congress faces yet another deadline and more division over how to move forward on some of the president's key agenda items. Let's bring in our panel right now. Jennifer Wagner, Mike Murphy, Robin Winston, Tony Samuel. And let's start with Jennifer Wagner, former communications director for the Indiana Democrats. Jennifer, the president's polling numbers have also taken a hit in recent weeks. Does he have the political capital he needs right now to get some of those agenda items across the finish line?
That's a great question, Dan. And I think, this is another example of governing is always harder than getting elected, right? There's all these irons in the fire. The answer is, I think that he does have the capital. Obviously, Democrats are in control in Washington. There are some that are sitting on the fence that may need some persuasion, but I think ultimately he will get these bills through. He will be able to confront the climate crisis. We will be able to build back better infrastructure. So I believe that he will be able to do those things, but I also think it's because he has a steady hand. He is not panicking. He is not governing from the hip, if you will. And I think in the long term, that approach is going to be highly successful for him.
All right, let's turn to former GOP lawmaker Mike Murphy. Mike, you have the politics involved here. You also have the pandemic itself. Certainly some confusion ahead of that final overruling decision from the CDC Friday that put things in motion for Indiana and other states to start getting those booster shots out to people who are eligible. How would you assess the administration's handling of this booster rollout specifically?
Well, I think by and large, I think Biden's done a good job with COVID. More people are getting the shots. We're getting closer to the herd immunity. He did not cause the earthquakes in Haiti to happen. But he has screwed up Afghanistan big time. So like most presidents of either party, he has a mixed record at this point.
Well, let's bring in former state party chair for the Indiana Democrats, Robin Winston. Robin, your response to that, and how do you assess the president's ability here so far to handle these many crises that they've faced?
Well, I listened to what Jennifer said, and he's talking about governing. He is governing. Think about right here in Indiana, Dan, we can get $6 billion back into the state for human and capital infrastructure, roads, bridges, support for Medicare, things like that matter at the kitchen table. So the president is doing that. Yes, you're right. He's taken on a lot, but that goes with the job, and he's well prepared for it. The one thing that we will say is it's been calm and smooth, and that certainly is a change from the past.
Well, let's go finally here to Tony Samuel, 2016 vice chair for the Indiana Trump campaign. Tony, how does all of this set the stage for 2022 politically with the midterms right around the corner?
Well, let me say this. This country was on an upward trajectory, and then Joe Biden and Kamala Harris took office, and in 8 months, we are now spiraling downward. And I say that because there's all of these crises. There's the border, there's Afghanistan, there's people still trapped in Afghanistan. It's been like 26 days, and he hasn't addressed that. Americans trapped behind enemy lines in Afghanistan, and he won't talk about it. There's crime surging. There's Antifa that rioted throughout last summer. Nobody's investigated that. There's inflation. The list goes on and on. You can't be doing this poorly as a president unless you're doing this on purpose. And let me explain that a little bit. When we were looking through the elections before he was the nominee, remember everyone, the 25 or 30 Democrat candidates were moving further and further to the left. We talked about this a lot. He joined them. Then he tried to act like he was a moderate, but he's so swayed by the progressives, the people that are really controlling things and his agenda, and they're trying to tear this country down to build it back, not better, but in a different form. And that is driven by the Marxist ideology that is now taken over the Democrat Party. Not folks here in Indiana, but on the national level and the national media. You're seeing it in schools with critical race theory. This is really much more serious than bad poll numbers right now.
Jennifer, a lot to unpack there. I guess the obvious question after a lot of the things Tony had to say there is, yes, there's a lot going on in the news. Do the Republicans have a focused enough message on 2022 and what specifically they'll be taking to voters here in the midterms next year?
Well, I think you heard all of the buzzwords right there in Tony's diatribe. I mean, you've got it all, right? Scary, 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 big fear, I don't know how many times you can hear Kamala Harris's name. We have to talk about critical race theory, which, by the way, has nothing to do with anything that's going on in schools right now. But that's what we're going to get. More of the same, fear tactics and scaremongering. And I honestly think that voters are tired of it. That's all they got from Donald Trump. And I think they want something different. I think they want, like Robin said, that steady hand, someone who knows how to govern and has their best interests at heart.
Mike, what about the impact of redistricting here in Indiana? Let's talk a little bit more about that. The state Senate maps released this past week. Democrats objecting to the way that Marion County was split up with 10 different districts that are partly in Indianapolis and then stretch out to more rural areas too. How will these new maps impact the inner workings of our state legislature? We've seen some lawmakers announce their retirements as well because of different districts and how things will be mapped out moving forward.
Oh, we already have supermajorities, Dan, in both chambers. So I don't think it really affects the game much at all. You have to remember that people move to opportunity. And ever since, frankly, began in the administration of former Governor Evan Bayh, and we've had 3 Democratic governors and 3 Republican governors since then, people continue to move towards central Indiana because that's where the opportunity is. The redistricting has to reflect that by law. So I got a kick out of Chairman Shmuel referring to people on the Republican side as Washington operatives. There's no greater Washington operative than Chairman Shmuel. He ran a presidential campaign. That, by definition, is a Washington operative.
Robin, your view on all this, and particularly how it impacts those Senate districts here in Indy?
I'd be remiss if I didn't think that Tony missed January the 6th. That's going to be the issue in 22. Did you happen to remember that people tried to overturn our democracy, threatened the Republican Vice President of the United States, stormed the Capitol, beat up Capitol Police? That, to me, trumps everything, no pun intended. Back to redistricting, I've been through it before. I was state chair when we had 50-50. We turned it to 53-47 because we picked up 3 seats. Democrats will have to get their message about kitchen table issues out. It has to resonate, and I believe that will happen in 22.
Tony, what's your response to that?
Well, a couple of things. These aren't just buzzwords. These are the reasons why Biden's polling numbers are sinking. We just spent $70 to fill up my wife's car with gas. That's crazy. The cost of food's going up. The cost of lumber is going up. People died in Afghanistan. Our military service members, 13 of them, that should not have ever happened. That's on Joe Biden. As far as what Robin said, yeah, some people did some dumb things on January 6th, but why don't we talk about the riots that Antifa and Black Lives Matter, all the deaths that they caused? Nobody died except for one person that was shot by a Capitol police officer in the neck. That was a Trump supporter. That was one of the people that came into the Capitol.
There was an
Nobody
officer,
died on
there
the
was a
other
police
side,
officer
like they
who
did
died.
during the Black Lives
There was
Matter.
a police officer who died
Police officer
in the
died.
midst of January 6th as well, in the midst of that situation.
Right.
Jennifer, I'll
But he
give
wasn't killed. That was from a stroke, and there was a lot of falsehoods around that when it first came out from the media.
I'm not really sure that we know enough about that to say that definitively here. Look, obviously a lot to unpack ahead of the midterms next year, no doubt about it, and we'll continue to have that conversation here with our panel. Coming up next this Sunday in Focus, we're going to hear from a potential candidate for governor in 2024, Lieutenant Governor Suzanne Crouch, talking about the issue of expanding broadband access here in Indiana. It's coming up next.